Hello. Hey, everybody. Welcome tonight. Thank you all for being here. My name is Lucia. I'm with the Community Engagement Department here at the Wikimedia Foundation. I just want to say thank you all for coming. We're very excited to have you here in the space. Those of you who are from some of our peer organizations in this city, we'd love to help host more of these kinds of events. So, find me afterwards. I'd love to talk to you about how we can do more working with you and with your organizations. Pete's been a model as the sponsor here. Would love to talk to you all about how we can do more like that. On that note, thank you, welcome, and let me hand it off to Pete.
Thank you. So my name is Pete Forsythe, as you probably know if you've found your way here. I have a small training and consulting company called Wiki Strategies, in which I help organizations of all different types engage with Wikipedia, sometimes on technical projects, sometimes improving articles about themselves, sometimes improving articles generally in a topic area. And my biggest project in that realm is a project called Communicate OER that from 2012 to 2014, I worked with the open educational resources community around the world to help them learn to edit Wikipedia and develop a practice of improving articles relevant to open educational resources. So with that background, when the topic of open access, which is very tightly tied with open educational resources, those communities are very well connected. When that topic and the Wikipedia Library, a program here at the Wikimedia Foundation, came into a bit of conflict, or at least what seemed like conflict initially, it really caught my attention on Twitter. We had a bit of discussion, and I suggested, well, let's take this beyond a place where we're limited to 140 characters and actually have a discussion for a couple hours. So that's where this event came from, and I think as we came to that conclusion, there's really one person who came to mind as really the most qualified, maybe the most qualified person on the planet to speak to both sides of it. Someone who has deep roots in the open access community and movement, and also someone who's served for a very long time on the Wikimedia Foundation's advisory board. And that someone is Melissa Hageman. Unfortunately, she lives in Washington, D.C., so she's not able to join us in person, but she did agree to cut into her daughter's bedtime and give us some opening remarks. So let's have a round of applause for Melissa.
Great, thanks, Pete. And I'm really sorry I can't be there with you in person. And I'd like to thank you for organizing the discussion for, I believe the open access and Wikimedia communities really share many of the same goals, yet we haven't always collaborated. So I think that this is a great occasion to really build upon some work that's already been done and to develop greater ties with each other. So just as a means of introduction, I'll share some background on the development of the open access movement, as I'm not sure how familiar everyone is there with it, as well as my thoughts when I first discovered in 2011 that negotiations were underway with commercial publishers and some of the Wikimedia editors, and then some of the work to build collaborations between the two communities, which I'm aware of, which has developed since that time. So my own organization, the Open Society Foundations, helped to define open access in 2001 through a meeting we organized in Budapest, which brought together leaders who were exploring alternative publishing models. And it was at that meeting that I met Mike Eisen, and where we developed something called the Budapest Open Access Initiative, or the BOAI. And the BOAI offered two strategies for open access, which is the free online availability of peer-reviewed research. So the two methods or strategies are the development of open access journals, which are journals which are available freely online. And the second is the development of repositories or archives, which are places where, when an article has been published in a closed access journal, a copy of that article can be deposited in the repository and then be made freely available online. Now, somewhat unfortunately, in my view, after the BOAI was released, some began referring to OA journals as the gold route to open access, and archives or repositories is the green route. And while this is just shorthand, I do think that it's caused some unnecessary confusion within the movement, and especially for those who are outside of the movement, it's sort of hard to know at firsthand what gold and green is. But a year after the BOAI was released, the movement came up with another strategy for achieving open access, and that's to advocate for public access to publicly funded research. And this strategy has seen quite a bit of success over the years. In 2008, the National Institutes of Health here in the US, which is the largest funder of research in the world, adopted a policy which mandates that all of the research which they fund, which amounts to approximately $30 billion annually, will now be made publicly available online. So the open access movement is really gaining steam and has seen some successes over the years. So in addition to my work on open access, as Pete mentioned, I've been collaborating with the Wikimedia Foundation since 2007. And so in 2011, I saw a discussion on the main foundation list, which really caught my eye, is the discussion was about providing subscriptions to commercial journals for Wikimedians with a high number of edits. And the focus of this discussion was on the number of edits which should be required before the subscriptions will be provided to the leading editors. And while of course I think it is very beneficial to provide access to leading journals to the editors, is we want to use the best references to build Wikipedia. I was initially struck when I was learning about these negotiations and suggested on the list that the editor should also be made aware of open access content. So I continued the conversation with Phoebe Ayers and Eric Mueller, who was the deputy director, about ways to raise awareness of open access with Wikimedians. And Eric suggested that the Open Society Foundation, my organization, could support a Wikimedian in residence on open access, and he suggested Daniel Meachin, which turned out to be a really great idea in my view. We went on to support Daniel in this role for 2 years, and then we gradually began to expand upon the work because we really wanted to cross-fertilize or cross-pollinate the two communities. And so we supported some Wikimedians who were beginning to work on open access. So it was Daniel and Andrea Zani from Italy, Lane Raspberry, Matt Sennett, to attend one of the leading open access meetings. And then we also supported some leading open access advocates, Nick Shockey and Leslie Chan, to attend Wikimania. And one of the conclusions that we came to from these meetings and from the synergies which we're building between the two communities was that to get Wikimedians to really appreciate open access, we couldn't simply just tell them about it, but we had to show them how open access could really benefit them. The one idea which came out of these discussions is the OA Signaling Project, or the Open Access Signaling Project, which is a project which Daniel is helping to develop, and which will signal to readers whether a particular reference in a Wikipedia article is open access. Now, the main purpose of such signaling is to really spare readers the disappointment, excuse me, and frustration of clicking through a reference to only hit a paywall, because of course that happens quite often when commercial journals are used as references in Wikipedia articles. So another great example of a collaborative project between the two communities is the Open Access Wikipedia Editathon, which Jake and Nick Shockey recently organized during Open Access Week. So I'm grateful that this discussion has been organized tonight. I too was struck when I learned about the negotiations with the publishers, but I think much progress has been made over the years. And at the end of the day, the Wikimedia and open access movements are two like-minded communities which share many of the same goals. And I believe we need to continue to work to foster greater collaboration and understanding between these two really important communities. Thank you.
Okay, I'm hearing on the side that Melissa has just summed it up, so maybe we can all just go home. But instead, why don't we come up and take our seats and let's dig into this stuff a little bit. And all right, so I'd like to get started here. I'd like to really jump into the issue that first started, prompted this discussion. So we're going to start off with Jake Orlowitz, who's right here, and then Michael Eisen to give us a general sense of what is the controversy that we're looking at today. And then we're going to have a little bit of a break and then open it up to the full panel. So Jake, do you want to get us started?
Hi, thanks everyone for coming. Some of my favorite organizations are in the room and it's really amazing. And I wish I was not thinking about a particular issue because I'd love to chat and schmooze with all of you because I think there is tremendous commonalities in a lot of what we do. But we are here to talk about a particular issue, and it's the program that I run at the Wikimedia Foundation. It's called the Wikipedia Library. And since 2011, the Wikipedia Library has received donations from 45 publishing partners. You've probably heard most of their names: Elsevier, EBSCO, Taylor and Francis, Oxford University Press, JSTOR. A lot of very big, wealthy, prestigious, some nonprofit publishers in the world. And this has enabled 3,000 of our most active editors to receive free year-long full-text access to 5,000 accounts from these leading scholarly and research databases. And they then use that access to improve articles, summarizing and citing for the public what would otherwise be locked away from them behind those paywalls. This is important to us because reliable sources are very much the bedrock of Wikipedia. As Wikipedia aims to be a summary of all knowledge, not just open access knowledge, we look both to the increasingly numerous and reputable open access publishers, as well as the vast legacy of paywalled providers that exist and in some fields still dominate. Access donations mutually benefit our editors, our readers, and also, admittedly, the publishers that we work with. This has always been an eyes-open arrangement, a compromise, a trade-off, an imperfect but definite good in a world wishing for better. Wikipedia is the tip of the iceberg of knowledge, but it is an extremely visible part. It's the 8th highest referrer of digital object identifiers, or DOIs, which means lots of journals are read through Wikipedia. We have 500 million monthly readers and 8,000 views per second. And this visibility has been good for open access too. A recent study just came out and found that an OA journal is nearly 50% more likely to be referenced on Wikipedia than a closed access competitor. However, the common thread in that study was that our citation habits are influenced by impact factor as a proxy for quality. In other words, we don't cite open or closed sources, we cite good sources. Readers rely on Wikipedia. 50 to 90% of doctors, surveys have shown, and 94% of medical students. Wikipedia is the most viewed resource on medical information online, and to drive the point home, was the most consulted source of information on Ebola in the areas affected by the Ebola outbreak. We are working now for those readers by giving our most active editors access to research skills, and research experts to help them expose paywalled knowledge to the massive public coming to Wikipedia for information. But knowledge all the way down to the bottom of the iceberg goes way beyond Wikipedia. It includes our citations. And it even includes, as John will talk about, the citations that our citations cite. And then further down than that, it includes the data behind research, or the code, or the protocols. Open knowledge, open access, fully open science are different aspects of the same important goal. At the Wikipedia Library, we're doing what we can, where we know we can make an impact now. The Wikipedia Library also aims to surface free and open sources, connect editors to libraries and librarians, form global research hubs, and promote open access. Our program consists of just 2.5 people out of the Wikimedia Foundation's 300, and our editing community's 80,000 active contributors. In other words, Elsevier, the proximate cause of this debate, is 2% of our partnership program, which is one of our 5 goals at the Wikipedia Library. To the point, Elsevier is perhaps the least popular publisher on the planet. And I understand the strong reactions, shock, or even sense of betrayal that was felt by some when their press release came out announcing a relatively small donation as if it was a great benefit to us. We heard that this was simply a bad deal that we made, and more concerningly, that it would prolong the closed access publishing model, which has kept knowledge away from so many for so long. How do we respond to this? In 1 minute. I'm definitely going to have to leave a lot of these various responses to the discussion itself, but I think we recognize that there's a direct trade-off in the benefit to our readers now, and there is evolution among the publishers. We have improving relationships with them where more access is donated over time, to greater numbers of editors, to greater numbers of sources, and the criticism that we've received about this being a bad deal, I think, has forced us to ask ourselves, are we pushing for a hard enough bargain? And we're really excited in particular about a partnership that we are piloting hopefully this November, where not just the editors will be able to access the source, but readers will be able to access the source as long as they're clicking the link through from Wikipedia. So these relationships do begin small. They don't always sound impressive. But I think that they bring the publishing world closer to where we are, and they bring knowledge closer to our readers. And we very, very much need to collaborate with open access allies, advocates, and critics in order to accomplish what we truly aim to accomplish, which is sharing the sum of all human knowledge.
Okay, so thanks, Jake. And next up, we're going to hear from Michael Eisen, who is Michael is a biologist at the University of California, Berkeley, and also, as you may remember from Melissa's opening remarks, he was one of the people present at the 2001 Budapest Open Access Initiative. So he has a long history in advocating for open access. And so, Michael, what did you think when you first heard about this Wikipedia Library deal with Elsevier?
Yeah, let me start by saying I think we're not really actually much in conflict here. So I'm sort of re-engineering a conflict for the purposes of this discussion. Also, I just want to say thanks to Melissa for introducing us. Melissa played down her important role in the birth of open access. It was really her leadership at sort of bringing together these disparate forces out there in the world who weren't really working together. There was no such thing as an open access movement until she convened all of us in Budapest and sort of got people thinking along the path. And the influence of that act, 13 years ago or 14 years ago is still being felt today. So I sort of want to say thanks to her if she's still there and not watching the World Series. I guess I'll try to reconstruct what led me to sort of through Wikipedia. Through Twitter, as one does. I also troll through Wikipedia, and I saw a juxtaposition of two things that I rarely would have thought would have been juxtaposed in a positive manner, which was Wikipedia and Elsevier. And as Jake said, Elsevier, Elsevier is a word that's almost as bad as the Yankees in my worldview. And seeing Wikipedia, who it's hard for me to find an organization and a project that I am more in love with than Wikipedia. To see that juxtaposed with Elsevier was sort of like if I saw my brother wearing a Yankees hat. And so my initial reaction was very, very negatively visceral in the sense that, positive manner, which was Wikipedia and Elsevier. And as Jake said, Elsevier, Elsevier is a word that's almost as bad as the Yankees in my worldview. And seeing Wikipedia, who it's hard for me to find an organization and a project that I am more in love with than Wikipedia. To see that juxtaposed with Elsevier was sort of like if I saw my brother wearing a Yankees hat. And so my initial reaction was very, very negatively visceral in the sense that, you know, we can talk in minute detail. You know, I clicked through to figure out what was going on, and there was this announcement of this deal between, I guess the deal is technically between the Wikipedia Library project and Elsevier, and I guess I'll just try to describe the deal the way it looks to someone who is primarily interested in reforming the way that science publishing happens, which was you know, Elsevier is, for those of you who don't know, the dominant player in the science publishing industry. Depending on which sector of the industry you look at, it controls something between 30 and 40% of the industry. It has billions of dollars of revenue in science publishing, and it has long been the most dominant force amongst commercial publishers in fighting back against open access. They spend millions of dollars on lobbying to fight open access legislation in various ways. And so they really are more than just a big publisher. They sort of are the open access enemy. And what I saw in that press release and in the deal was, first of all, something that Elsevier was using to advertise themselves. Right. This was Elsevier saying, "Hey, look, we're, you know, even though we publish God knows how many papers every year, probably several 100,000 papers every year behind paywalls, we're really on the side of the good. We are helping Wikipedia build an encyclopedia of open knowledge. We're pro open knowledge. You know, ignore the man behind the curtain who takes 300,000 papers and puts them behind paywalls every year. We really love what the open parts of the world are doing, so much so that we're donating." And not to get too fine a detail. They're not, donating's kind of a nice way of saying it. Elsevier isn't losing anything by making this deal. They're basically just opening up their paywall to a bunch of people who are never going to pay to get access to it anyway. It costs Elsevier nothing other than some coders 2 minutes worth of time to enable this kind of access. And they are giving something to Wikipedia, but they're also getting something in return, which is a lot of links, a lot of publicity. And, you know, from my point of view, what was happening was, you know, Elsevier was getting something materially good for them. Clicks are, you know, everybody knows that's a commodity in this world. They're getting people to come through to their websites, some of whom, who knows how many, are going to pay whatever exorbitant fees Elsevier wants them to pay to get access to their journals. And they're you know, while making a deal that is a good business deal for them, they're getting all this free PR in which people who are, you know, in everybody's worldview, Wikipedia is on the side of openness and good, that the Wikipedia people are saying, hey, look, Elsevier's on the side of the angels. And so it, you know, I think you can probably understand why this was a little bit rankling to someone who thinks primarily about things through the lens of publishing. So now let me say, as we've started to talk about it, okay, as we started to talk about it a little bit more, you know, I think I've come to see it maybe in a slightly broader perspective, which is I understand completely why Wikipedia is doing this. That you know, I couldn't do my job without access to paywall journals. It's part of my life as a scientist. I happen, you know, I can simultaneously rail against the University of California subscribing to all these journals, but I still use them. So it is a little bit unreasonable of me to say that you know, the Wikipedia editors somehow should be denied access to this information. So I get why it's happening, and I don't necessarily oppose the effort to do this. But I do think it raises a broader question, which is I hope what we can really talk about here today, which is, you know, Wikipedia and open access and the open access movement are trying for the same thing. We're trying to create a world in which knowledge is freely and openly available to everybody, where there's no barriers to getting access to it. We are as closely aligned in spirit and in goal as two organizations and two missions can be. And I think the big question for us all, and this is true question for the open access movement as it is for Wikipedia is, to what extent do we work as a common team in which we try to strategize what's going to happen 5 and 10 years in the future, and try to do things that might actually not be good for one side of the movement, to do things that might not be good for open access but are good for Wikipedia because we see a common goal at which these things converge? Or is it actually better for us to pursue our own individual missions, which, while aligned, are not identical, with the recognition that sometimes they're going to come in conflict with each other? And I think that rather than sort of rehashing the details of specific things, I think this is the real question for us moving forward. Is I think it's a bad thing from the open access movement that we haven't worked more closely together with Wikipedia and the open encyclopedia movement. And I think if as Melissa said, I hope that actually what comes out of this is a much better understanding of the issues that are facing both of us, and hopefully sort of better alignment and a better understanding of the ways in which we can align ourselves to either avoid conflict in the future or to recognize that conflict is potentially an inevitable happening, but is a good thing in the broader sense.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, can you hear me? Yeah. So with that introduction to what brings us here, what I'd like to do is actually take a little bit of a break so that we all can kind of contemplate this issue, and then open things up to the rest of the panel. So a couple of bits of housekeeping. Number one, if you're not aware, we are joined by, I think, about 30 or 40 people on the live stream. So hello, you can wave to the camera over here. And so for about the next 10 minutes or so, there's not going to be much of anything interesting to watch on the YouTube stream. So for you, look down in the description or the comments under that, and you'll see the hashtag that you can use on Twitter, or an IRC chat room that you can log into. Either one of them, you're going to use the hashtag OAW for Open Access Week 15 SF. And so if you want to converse there, we're going to be keeping an eye on those channels, and as we get to questions later on, we're going to bring them to the panel. And for those of you in the room here, what I'd like you to do is take 3 minutes and find someone sitting near you, preferably someone that you don't know too well. It's a nice opportunity to get to know someone, and just discuss what do you think of what Jake and Michael just presented. And after you do that, I'm going to take a few comments that are sort of going to feed into the panel so we can kind of get a sense of who's in the room and what has captured your interest. This isn't really a time for formal questions. We'll get to that later. We're going to have that later in the event. But just, give us a sense what's interesting about it. What worries you about this? What excites you about this? What don't you understand, right? If some of this just kind of went over your head and you don't even know what we're talking about, now's a really good time to let us know so we can break it down. So 3 minutes starting now, and we'll come back to the panel after that. Did I hear a question? Okay.
Testing, Jake, testing, testing, Jake, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing.
Sync test 1 2 1 2 3. Sync test 1 2 1 2. Sync test A B C D E F G. Sync test 1 2 3 1 2 3.
They're not doing it on their, they're not doing it when they're coming to paper, right? When they're doing it when they and then they're getting us otherwise.
Okay. So let's bring it back in here. We're going to have plenty of opportunity for more discussion later. Okay, so we had we found out that the audio and the video were out of sync on the live stream, so we tried to take an opportunity there to get it back synced up. So hopefully this is looking better for those of you out there in what we used to call TV land. But so let's take a few minutes here now. I'm really interested in hearing some of what you guys were talking about. So I'm just going to take a few comments or questions, just brief questions here. And I think Asaf is, if there's anything coming up for people online, we have someone here, Asaf Bartov, is going to be relaying your questions as well. So I've got one right here, James.
So and use the microphone on the side too, so that our audience can hear you as well. So there's a microphone over here, and you can find out who that's.
So just one comment about open access publishers. One of the issues we face is that open access publishers publish very few literature reviews. I know PLOS Medicine had a policy that they wouldn't Michael, would you like to comment on that?
I completely agree. That's definitely never been a focus of. It's never been.
That's fantastic, but we're going to hold full answers until we're just going to get a few ideas here. Yeah, that's right. So anyone here? I've got another comment.
In my experience, like trawling through DOAJ, Directory of Open Access Journals, a lot of those are like from like countries that are non-English speaking, or even if they are English speaking, they might be India. And if you try to cite those sources, for one thing, they may not be the highest quality, but also people in the Wikipedia community look at them with a lot of skepticism. I know I've been able to find a lot of literature reviews in the medicine world, but a lot of them are from Indian journals. And, you know, I've sometimes discussed with medical editors, and they don't really like those. I don't blame them, you know? Yeah.
Okay, so we have the internet and Wikipedia kind of driving some cross-cultural questions around academia. Any other comments, questions? Asaf, are you seeing anything online there you want to relay? No? Okay, oh, we got one back here, so you're going to need a microphone. Brendan, I'm hearing the screen is dead right now? Okay, so we're working on that.
It would be helpful to know if there's any experience of editors, how the new policies has changed their behavior. So for example, if they feel like they've gotten a gift and they are especially inclined now to use Elsevier articles, that would be negative.